Yan, hello mga kameta, kamusta kayo dyan? How are you? How are you? Ayan, katulad ng pangako natin, sabi ko balikan ko itong issue ng South China Sea, West Philippine Sea, at saka itong ruling ng Supreme Court this year, this week actually, ukol dito sa Joint Maritime Seismic Undertaking or yung Joint Exploration Deal na na-sign natin ng panahon ni President Arroyo, no? At of course, malaking implication ito dahil yung kasalukuyan na administration from Tatay Digong to now, in the case of Bongbong Marcos, their efforts to revive a deal similar to that. At dahil dito sa Supreme Court ruling na yan, that's really gonna complicate the situation significantly, lalong-lalo na dun sa mga, alam mo na, yung mga mahal na mahal nilang China, yung mga tatay style na China is our best friend, mga ganon. Makakomplicate talaga yung bagay niyan. So, balikan natin itong issue na yan. Ano yung ruling ng Supreme Court natin this week? Pag-usapan natin ng shortly. Sorry about that. Ayan. So, ito, basahin lang natin mga kameta para karoon tayo ng proper understanding of the situation. Ayan. So, ito, may ruling na tayo sa Supreme Court mga kameta. At basahin natin yung ruling na yan. So Supreme Court, yung decision niya this week is that unconstitutional po yung 2005 Joint Maritime Seismic Undertaking with China and also Vietnam dyan sa West Philippine Sea. At may relevance din ito dahil ngayon nga sabi natin, meron din efforts to revive a similar deal, no? Gusto ko balikan muna tong ruling. So on Tuesday, January 10, nagdeklara po ng Supreme Court ng Pilipinas na void and unconstitutional yung 2005 Tripartite Agreement for Joint Maritime Seismic Undertaking among China's National Offshore Oil Corporation, Vietnam Oil and Gas Corporation, Petro-Vietnam, CNOOC, and Philippine Oil Company, PNOC, on 142,886 square kilometers dyan sa South China Sea. So that gives you just a idea of how much was at stake here. Maraming resources ang involved dyan. It was a decision handed down in Baguio City during its full court session. At ayon sa Supreme Court's Public Information Office, the High Court ruled that the JMSU is unconstitutional for, quote, allowing wholly owned foreign corporations to participate in the exploration of the country's natural resources without observing the safeguards provided in Section 2, Article 7 of the 1987 Constitution. So, yung full decision po ay sinulat ng Associate Justice Samuel Garland. Hindi pa siya fully available, pero at least meron tayong yung press release na meron tayo. Now, balikan natin itong Article 2, Section 2, Article 7 ng ating saligang batas para makita ng mga, lalong-lalo ng mga kameta natin dyan at saka mga ka-unity natin na atat na supportahan whatever tatay says or whatever. Tingnan natin yung sarili nating saligang batas para maintindihan po natin ang konteksto ng sinasabi natin dito mga kameta. Alright? Okay. So, kung titignan mo, minamandato ng ating saligang batas, again, specifically Section 2, Article 7, that, quote, the exploration, development, and utilization, EDU, of natural resources shall be under the full control and supervision of the Philippine state. Again, it should be under the full control and supervision of the Philippine state. So, ang problema dun sa agreement na sinain under Arroyo, President Arroyo, was that, quote, it was illegal as it allowed foreign corporations wholly owned by China and Vietnam to undertake large-scale exploration of the country's petroleum resources in violation of the constitutional provision which reserves the ED of natural resources, ito exclusively to Filipino citizens or corporations or associations at least 60% of whose capital is owned by such citizens, meaning Filipino citizens. No? So kung titignan natin yung pagdepensa naman ng kabila is that sinasabi nila na at the time sinabi ng Arroyo administration that Section 2, Article 7 of the Constitution was inapplicable as the said provision contemplates the ED of natural resources, whereas the JMSU only involves pre-exploration activities. So, ang laban nung mga Arroyo administration at saka mga pro-government supporters back then, or potentially also those who are pushing still for exploration deal right now, is that, well, we're not looking at EDU, no? We're not looking at full exploitation, development, and utilization of those resources. We're looking at just a preliminary exploration deal. So, yun po yung naging defensa nila. So, in particular, yung defense nila is that parties express desire to engage in a joint research of petroleum resource potential of a certain area of the South China Sea as a pre-exploration activity. So, dahil pre-exploration lang siya, dapat hindi siya unconstitutional. But nevertheless, the Supreme Court of the Philippines made it very clear na para sa kanila unconstitutional ito dahil this is already giving significant amount of control dun sa foreign corporations to be able to utilize, explore, exploit yung ating mga resources, no, doon sa ating mga karagatan. So that's the context, guys, na pinag-usapan natin dito, no. So ayon sa Supreme Court, it is clear that the JMSU was executed for the purpose of determining if petroleum exists in the agreement area. So that the parties designated the joint research as a pre-exploration activity is of no moment. In short, nonsense yung sinasabi na pre-exploration yan kasi clearly may intent for exploitation or ED of those resources. Such designation does not detract from the fact that the intent and aim of the agreement is to discover petroleum, which is tantamount to exploration. So pasok siya doon sa EDU, no? Base sa ating saligang batas. Ayon sa Supreme Court, the JMSU involves the exploration of the country's petroleum resources. It falls within the ambit of Section 2, Article 7 of the 1987 Constitution. So Chief Justice Alexander Hesmundo and 10 other justices concurred in the decision. Associate Justice Lazar Javier and Zalmeda dissented, but Associate Justice Ramon Paul Hernando was on leave and did not take part. So yon. So klarong-klaro na even yung sinasabi na pre-exploration deal pa lang, which by the way was conducted with significant amount of secrecy and lack of transparency, this was still in clear violation of the Constitution dahil it involves, mga kameta, the EDU principles, no? The exploration, development, and utilization of natural resources within the Philippines waters, no? Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf. So yung national patrimony provisions ng ating Constitution, please basahin yun bago kayo magsalita at kung ano sinasabi dyan. Lalo na yung mga tatay lovers or China lovers dyan. Okay? Klaroin natin, no? So ito na. Meron nang tayong clear ruling there. Now, of course, sinasabi ng iba, may implication din ito for ongoing negotiations or ongoing efforts to revive something similar under new administration, i.e. in this case, President Marcos Jr. So ayon sa former Congressman Teddy Casino, for instance, the ruling remained pertinent in the wake of renewed plans for the Philippines to take on joint and gas exploration deal with China. Ayon sa kanya, although it took 14 years for the court to resolve the case, the ruling is as relevant as ever considering President Marcos Jr.'s plan to enter into joint exploration of the West Philippine Sea with China. Maybe this is a warning to Mr. Marcos not to trifle with the constitutional provisions that reserve the exploitation of the natural resources exclusively to Filipinos and under the full supervision and control of the Philippine government. So we're yet to see a full statement as far as the president is concerned. Pero ayon kay Supreme Court spokesman Attorney Brian Hosaka, the court cannot speculate on the existing negotiations because the nature could be different. The decision was strictly in connection to the 2005 Joint Maritime Seismic Undertaking. Ayon naman dun sa ibang petitioner katulad ng Attorney Nery Colmenares, if other countries or transnational corporations are willing to agree to such a constitutional requirement, meaning tanggapin nila na talaga sa Pilipinas lang yan, then the Marcos government may argue that it falls outside the ambit of the decision. If however, China insists on the claim na may ownership siya dun sa parts of West Philippine Sea, then it is unconstitutional. China has to accede to our constitution if it wants to have joint exploration in our territory or territorial claims. So yun po yung sinasabi natin. Katulad ng sinabi ko, mga kameta, wala naman problema kung we do something similar to dun sa nangyari sa Malampaya, di ba? Kasi nakita natin sa Malampaya, for instance, we were working for, we have worked with a foreign multinational company. It helped us to explore the resources, but at least klarong-klaro yung soberania ay nasa atin. More than that, you cannot deal with counterparts that are fully government owned, no? Sinopec, CNPC, Petro-Vietnam, whatever, because that has some direct implications for national sovereignty, national security, among others. Dapat ang mga involved ay companies who's at least have a 60% stake, no, na local capital. So for instance, as I said, what we can do is to have service contract, katulad ng ginawa natin, sorry, to clarify, we can have service contract kung saan we build a contract with a foreign company to explore the area, but clearly my profit sharing, revenue sharing, and also there's a clear recognition of our sovereignty. Or if we do joint exploration, hindi pwede with counterparts which are fully government owned or don't have a 60% ownership of Filipino citizens because it has implications for national sovereignty and national security po. Klaro ba? Okay. So yun po yung sinasabi natin ngayon. Now, let me quickly, mga kameta, let me quickly try to go into the issue of President Arroyo's past deals with China, because this is also relevant since it has really shaped the strategy of subsequent administrations. Of course, the Aquino administration in an oppositional sense, but in many ways it has been affirmed and adopted and adapted by succeeding administrations, including President Duterte and President Marcos. So I'm just making sure kung okay ba yung video natin, connection natin, or nakat tayo. Live pa rin ba tayo, mga kameta? Kasi di ko makikita dito eh. Are we live? Nakikita niyo ba ako? Ito eh. Are we live? Ayan, okay. Sige. Good. Kasi may mga new arrangements ng Facebook whereby siguro to help also with bandwidth, hindi niya sinasabay na binubuksan yung mga different videos. So, hindi ko malaman kanina kung exactly on tayo or hindi. Okay. Alright, so we're fine. Okay. Alright, mga kameta, let's get back to this. Kasi minsan, alam nyo na, honestly, I don't know if I'm being even shadow banned or something. Kasi minsan parang biglang yung engagement level ay, biglang bakit bumaba ng ganyan, no? So, I don't know what's going on there. So, minsan I don't know, suddenly biglang wala ng connection, whatever. Okay, now, balikan natin yan. So, we clarified, mga kameta, what was the context of the Supreme Court's decision. The context of the Supreme Court's decision was that yung JMSU cannot be just designated as pre-exploratory kasi clearly may element siya ng EDU, exploration, development, utilization of yung mga resources, oil and gas na sa loob ng West Philippine Sea, exclusive economic zone natin at continental shelf. When we say West Philippine Sea, we're not referring to the entirety of the South China Sea Basin because wala naman tayong claim sa Paracels or many other areas that is claimed by Malaysia, Vietnam on the other side of the West Philippine Sea or in the Pratas towards the north, close to Taiwan, etc. No, wala tayong claims dyan. So West Philippine Sea is not exactly tantamount to the entirety of the South China Sea Basin. It's just part of the South China Sea Basin that falls within our continental shelf and exclusive economic zone. So you're looking at 200 nautical miles to 250 nautical miles from our nearest shores. No? Okay? Claro. Now, so, ang sinasabi ng Supreme Court, of course, because they don't want to be prejudicial to potential future legal cases, if ever there'll be a new joint exploration deal, they're saying this is strictly about the JMSU. But sinasabi ng iba, especially mga petitioners who successfully argued the case against JMSU, is that, well, you're already setting a very clear precedence, and it's going to be very, very difficult for the succeeding administrations to go for a joint exploration deal, and then they try to pull off a kind of a legal magic there and say, no, it's not an EDU and all. No, that will be very difficult. And at the same time, kung wala naman talagang any kind of serious exploration, development, and utilization, and so anong incentive naman ito for China or Vietnam or other countries? What's the point for them? So scientific research lang siya. Well, we are doing already things similar to that. So yun yung context ng sinasabi natin, mga kameta. Kaya mahalaga talaga tong ruling na to because it sets a precedence, no? It provides a jurisprudential frame, a reference point, no? This is extremely important. Now, President Arroyo may not be as prominent as some would have expected. Si Gaza ba yan? Whatever. But she has been an extremely influential figure as far as shaping Philippine foreign policy in the past decade is concerned. I had a chance to interview her a few years ago. As I said, we are distant relatives. Tita ang tawag ko sa kanya. But so I interviewed her actually back in 2019. Quite an extensive interview. You can find it on YouTube for free. You can see the details of our discussions there. Now, for me, President Arroyo was extremely influential in shaping the Philippine foreign policy because it was really under President Arroyo that in the mid-2000s, we began what would be later called the golden age in Philippine-China relations. So well before Tatay Digong, and definitely Bongbong Marcos, and well after Marcos Sr., there was already an effort for the Philippines to establish some sort of an understanding with China in order to reduce our dependence on the United States. So this whole talk of Duterte admin and the Marcos admin about independent foreign policy, in fairness naman, Arroyo actually kind of started that version of independent foreign policy. Of course, I have my reservations with that interpretation of whether that is an independent foreign policy, very friendly to China, etc., including what they're in despite what they're doing to us in the West Philippine Sea, among others. But this whole strategy of being nice to China so that it gives us leverage to the U.S. and try to play them against each other, as far as the Philippines is concerned, this is very much an Arroyo legacy. And President Arroyo did that after we withdrew yung mga forces natin sa Iraq because yung isang OFW natin ay muntik na pinatay ng mga ISIS groups sa Iraq unless hindi natin na-withdraw yung mga troops natin as part of the so-called coalition of willing na nagkoral ng Bush administration to kind of give a fig leaf of legitimacy to their illegal and inhumane invasion of Iraq back in 2003. So nung winidraw natin, pinagalitan tayo ng US, pinagalitan tayo ng Australia, tinitreaten tayo, so what did Arroyo do? She went to China. And within the next 2 or 3 years, so I'm talking about 2004 to 2007, no, the Philippines and China had a very special relationship. It was a blossoming, bourgeoising relationship in every sense of the word. I've extensively covered that in my writings, in my academic works. In fairness, in fact, if you look at the WikiLeaks, whereby nan-leak yung internal communications ng American ambassadors and officials, even they were impressed with how good the relationship between the Philippines and China was. And actually, it made them encouraged na, baka naman, kung ganyan, at least wala tayong problema kasi hindi tayo madamay sa mga away nila sa West Philippines. May pagkaganyan tone kung binasa niyo yung mga WikiLeaks cables na leak, diba, obviously, a decade earlier. Now, the thing though is, as promising as this move was, and I think the intention was also good in some ways, and I think there was a lot of strategic sensibility behind this, it didn't end very well, no? Because on one hand, you had the JMSU, which was not negotiated with sufficient accountability, and now it's ruled completely as unconstitutional. You also had this iba-ibang deals, no? So, for instance, you had the NBNZT deal, whereby National Broadband Network, the Philippines would be built sana by ZT para high-speed broadband tayo, kaso ang grabing corruption levels doon. So that became a major national issue and a corruption scandal that really hounded our relations with China because ZT of China was involved there. Then also the other big Chinese project, the North Railway project, was declared by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional because it violated competitive bidding procedures. So practically all major projects between the Philippines and China under Arroyo were either struck down by the Supreme Court, then now the JMSU, then earlier in I think 2013, right, by in North Railway in the early 2010s, and most recently JMSU, and then yung NBNZT naman, it completely fell apart because of yung corruption scandals, etc. Speaking of the JMSU, of course, it kind of lapsed and became somehow moot and academic in the late 2000s because hindi na-renew yan ng Arroyo administration because I think they anticipated legal and political backlash. But even though it lapsed in their late 2000s, a number of petitioners, Nery Colmenares, Teddy Casino, among others, still took it to the Supreme Court. And more than a decade later, at this final, we have some final legal statement and assessment on this issue. But so this is the context, guys. It's not like we never tried to reach out to China, right? It's not like we didn't have presidents who tried to have a good relationship or have the cake and eat it too, as far as the two superpowers are concerned. There was an effort, except it didn't work. It went really south on so many levels. Now, what's interesting is later when Duterte comes to power, essentially President Arroyo acts as one of his de facto chief foreign policy advisors, and President Arroyo herself admitted in some of the interviews, including discussions we had, that there's a lot of similarity between her foreign policy and that of Duterte. Now, obviously, she didn't say per se that she's a chief advisor to her on foreign policy issues, but clearly that was the case on so many levels that, even she on the record said that her policies and that of Duterte were very, very similar. In fact, she was the original when it comes to reaching out to China and trying to have a good relationship. Now, interestingly, while this was the case under Duterte, under Marcos naman, just the other week when he visited China, he also brought former President Arroyo with him, and he called her his secret weapon. No, secret weapon daw niya. Kasi because of the experience that President Arroyo has had in dealing with China. My thing, though, is I'm not sure that experience was very successful and productive over the long run, considering what happened to NBNZT, to North Railway, and now to JMSU, right? But nonetheless, she's highly respected by the succeeding presidents like Duterte and Marcos. But as I said, of course, yung experience ni President Arroyo in negotiating different deals with China is what Marcos and Duterte have been trying to draw on. But considering how those experiences were not so good in retrospect, two deals, JMSU and North Railway, were struck down by the Supreme Court, and BNZT totally marred in corruption scandals. The question is like, how do you separate the baby from the bathwater? No, so yun yung challenge for the Marcos administration. And I don't know how legally they're going to try to come up with a joint exploration deal with China that does not violate the Constitution. In fact, it's not like the Duterte administration didn't try it, right? The Duterte administration since 2017-18 all the way to 2020 to try to negotiate a similar deal. But as I correctly predicted, it's not going to work because there's just no way that you can accommodate the Chinese claims at the same time not violate the Philippine Constitution and the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal Award based on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. It's just going to be extremely difficult, no? I just want to pull out this. Ayan. So, this was an announcement in June by Teddy Locsin na they couldn't pull off the joint exploration with China despite years of negotiations, precisely because of the things that I mentioned earlier over the years, no? So, ito. So, the Duterte administration tried, but talaga it just didn't work, no? Kasi it violated the Constitution, di ba? And hindi rin naman pumapalag ang China, no? So, in a speech celebrating the 124th founding anniversary of the Department of Foreign Affairs last year, Locsin said that he had obeyed the president's instruction that talks on oil and gas explorations are over. Sabi niya, 3 years on and we had not achieved our objective of developing oil and gas resources so critical for the Philippines, but not at the price of the sovereignty, not even a particle of it. I'm not sure that's a very nice literary way of putting it. Sabi niya, we got as far as it is constitutionally possible to go. One step forward from where we stood on the edge of the abyss is a drop into constitutional crisis. That explains the sudden pullback on my part, which unraveled 3 years of sincere hard work on the part of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and me. We had both tried to go as far as we could without renouncing China's aspiration in his part and constitutional limitations on my part. I shut down shop completely, sabi niya. Right? So sabi niya talaga, they tried to protect the Philippine sovereignty all the way to the wire, but hindi pumapalag ng China, so any kind of joint exploration with them would have violated the Constitution. So it's completely undoable for them. It was just not going to work. So I don't know how the Marcos administration is going to pull this off without violating the Philippine Constitution. This is the context of our conversation today, mga kamet. Okay, I hope you appreciate it. I know a little bit technical siya, a little bit legal, geopolitical siya, but I hope you guys see the context of conversation because I'm not sure this is being explained as it should be, whether by bloggers, on mainstream media, etc. And I don't know if you guys, of course, bother to read yung mga much more academically oriented or technical readings, etc. on this matter. So I try to just simplify it for it. I hope na appreciate nyo naman yung mga maliit na efforts natin dito. Alright, mga kameta, thank you very much again for listening to us. Balikan ko kayo more on these kinds of issues and we'll try to break these things down as we get more updates. But yun nga, so we have a very, very important ruling that will set the precedence. And in many ways, it's going to make it harder for any Filipino president to undermine the Philippine sovereignty in any dealings with China. That's very, very important. And that has also huge implications for the ability of the Philippines and China to find a long-term, stable understanding. No? So that also has implications for our relations with US, with Japan, and other countries, because those countries are saying, careful in dealing with China, fortify your alliance with us, and we'll help you to protect your own interests. But of course, the fight should still come from us, not from our allies. So yung mga nagsasabi, ano maibigay na ng US sa atin? But, like, maya naman kayo sa sarili niya, di ba? This is about our own interests. We have to fight for our own and then get help from others. That's how it works, alright? We fight our own fights. Okay? Thank you very much again, as always. Let me say thank you dun sa lahat ng mga nagbigay ng support. I really, really appreciate it. Kay Ma'am Edna Olona, Jocelyn Lomberio, Noemi Tablade, Rizani, all the usual suspects. Thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it. Yung mga nag-join sa atin, si Cecilia Abejo Francisco, kay Marlene Waters, thank you so much for joining us. As always, Annabelle Gamoras also for support joining us. Kay Don Dantes Dizon joining us from Japan. Okay, gozaimasu. Bonnie the Duque also for joining us. Medyo emotional comments niya. Si Leia Pokis also. Ayan, medyo. Cecil Abejo Francesca, I already say thank you. Kay Riza Oraya, thank you very much also. Friends natin joining us from Laguna, from different parts of the country. I really, really appreciate it. Talk to you guys more soon, God willing. Thank you very much. God bless. Have a good day.